So the Bible says, thou shalt not steal. So thou shalt not steal implicitly, absolutely implies that there has to be private property ownership.
Moving on, the citizen charges their government to identify and defend its borders.
No, that's incorrect.
Okay, but the government takes money from you to execute that task. In this case, to ask the government, again, we're assuming that this is somebody else, to defend the borders without taxation is stealing. Exactly the same as if you ask someone to mend your house and did not pay them.
No, that's absolutely false because, okay, for 3 or 4 or 5 reasons. First off, personal property requires a delineation of borders. So I just bought 25 acres, right? I did not go to the government, oh, great overlords, please explain to me what parcel of land I just bought. What are the dimensions of that great land that I just spent my hard-earned fiat dollars on? No, no. There was a deed, okay? A deed is a contract, right? And the contract says, to the old oak tree, to the old bee's nest, up to the, you know, you have these, they're called abstracts, right? And that contract delineates that parcel of land. So let's say I have a piece of personal property, Richie has a piece of personal property, and say there's 100 people with personal properties, right? They all butt against each other. When you look at this overview of all these properties, the contracts determine the overall scope, which may be a county, which may be a state, which may be a country. But all of those pieces of property are owned by someone.
Exactly, and these are contracts between people. Now, when it comes to defending these pieces of property, those people can privately choose either to defend it themselves or, okay, so like I've been to South Africa a few times. There, it's a very socialist government. The government there, every day, it's just getting worse and worse over there. And it's because they're adopting socialist ideas. Well, the people there that need protection can't depend on this government because it's being so inefficiently run. So what they do, they hire private security teams. Now,
of course,
and it's an open market. If someone doesn't do a good job or has a better rate, they go to different people. Yeah. The point being that the government, when the responsibility is given completely to this, again, when you take away the responsibility from people specifically and you hand it to somebody else and there's no accountability, then the product decreases in quality.
A private market, if the government could do anything,
because there's no
if the government could do anything efficiently, they would outplace all of these private entities. Exactly. There would be no need for them. But because the fact they don't even do it poorly, they just rob and waste, and they are just implicitly incapable of doing anything well. And that's just a fact. That's not, I mean,
again, this is when you have this is when a group of people have said, we want somebody else to take the responsibility besides us. Okay, and that's what we've done in our country, is allowed the government to take the responsibility of our poor, of our widows, of our fatherless. We're kind of talking about the root of the problem here. We're not necessarily, there's a lot, we can talk about all the effects of having the government take care of things, but when it comes to this idea of personal responsibility, of private property, we have to understand that we're talking about you and yours, and understanding that the government is your personal responsibility.
Correct.
Of your things.
Even as we speak right now, with this quote-unquote caravan, there is militia, and there are 3%ers that are comprised of American citizenry, and they are down there willing and able to defend the border. And now, whether they are efficient or effective, they cost the government $0, and there are people that are willing to do this.
And they have decided to put their life on the line. They've decided to use their own resources to make this happen. Now, don't get me wrong here. Again, we're talking about government in that they've taken welfare, military, defense, all these different things. There is a place for civil government. Okay, so we've got this group of property owners, right? There's a breach of contract. Someone has to make the decision on how to deal with this breach of contract. A judge.
That can be done privately as well.
It can be done, but a group of people choose one person, a judge, to make the decision on how to deal with this problem. That's not necessary. Again, this is not.
And
this is a group of people agreeing.
And that's not even necessary because insurance has arbitration all the time, and it's not a legal body. And the arbitration is private. It's done by private companies, and it's done privately. And if they don't do a good job, you can pick a different arbiter. And it still does not require. And I would challenge someone to show me where government is absolutely necessary. And I know everybody wants to get freaked out by anarchy, a lot because of Hollywood and a lot because of the way that anarchy is portrayed. But anarchy hinges on personal responsibility and contracts between individuals. Because if you were to get somebody to fix your house, you would pick your contractor after interviewing multiple contractors. You'd pick the best one with the best reputation, and you would pay them when they're done. And that contractor wouldn't take money at the barrel of a gun out of your paycheck every week under the premise that someday in the future he may have to repair your home. I mean, it's just the whole entire concept. I mean, the whole entire illustration.
I don't have a contract with the government.
False, yeah.
So I'm not obligated to anything.
Yeah, except for your social security number, because they wanted to sell you as a worker bee, so they could leverage your human existence.
Which again is
to flood that. But yes, okay. So taxation and government go hand in hand. I totally agree. So if somebody could make the case for a government, I would say the best case is that government would have to be so infinitesimally small as to barely exist, and in turn, that taxation in turn would be infinitely as small as well, because that's the only way you can reduce the taxation is by reducing the government. You don't cut budgets, you reduce the size of government.
I think the best example, look at the Constitution, read the Constitution. These men understood this idea and were able to verbalize that through the Constitution.
Okay, point two. Okay, so they go hand in hand. Law enforcement shares the same principle, but more clearly. No, it does not. Your local sheriff...
I think if you keep reading, he expounded on it a little bit, so...
Okay. If the citizens do not want a lawless society, it must employ law enforcement, but part of that law enforcement is that you are forced to pay taxes or face punishment. You are forced to pay taxes or face punishment. Many sheriffs are not paid a dime. I have a good friend who's a sheriff. He's required to provide his own firearm, his own ammo. I don't even believe he's given a vehicle.
He's elected.
And he's an elected sheriff, and he costs the citizenry $0. He does not go up to any of them at the point of a gun and ask them for money. So that's another completely false premise.
But even then, okay, so like I live in the middle of nowhere. I'm responsible to protect myself. If I depended on anybody, I would be in trouble. So, and again, that's what's beautiful about our Constitution, about the Second Amendment, is that we do have not only the ability, but we have the provision in our founding documents to allow the people of this people-governed government, this government made up of people who are governing themselves, to defend themselves. I'm not depending on somebody else to defend me.
Right.
And again, it's a beautiful thing that I'm allowed to even go purchase weapons to protect myself.
And I'm going to defend the defenseless. Thou shalt not kill requires and implies that you value life and you protect life. So that's what thou shalt not kill implies, that thou shalt preserve life, just like thou shalt not
steal.
Law
enforcement, I mean, what are we talking about? Law, the entire law, every law in the United States, we talk about this all the time, where there are so many laws that...
You're breaking hundreds of laws a day you don't know.
So this whole law, who enforces the law?
We're all lawbreakers.
If I'm a store owner, you see this all the time, a store owner, someone comes in to rob the store and the store owner is armed. Is he now an enforcer of the law? No. He's not law enforcement. He's someone who has his personal property being infringed upon.
But what if there's a law and it's a gun-free zone, and the bad guy brings a gun anyway?
And breaks... We have an issue here that's being completely exploited by criminals.
Of course.
Everywhere.
Which just shows you that all these laws are stupid.
So anywhere where gun regulations are extremely high,
law.
Crime rates are extremely high.
And why would law enforcement even think that that's a good idea? Law enforcement knows that private gun ownership reduces crime. It's a statistical fact.
But it's about what's the word? Job security. The less now you have to call them because now you're not an armed anymore.
Okay, so if the citizens do not want a lawless society, it must employ law enforcement. But part of the law enforcement is that you're forced to pay taxes or face punishment. That's a false premise. Okay, the taxes you pay then assure the continuation of law enforcement.
Okay.
In the context of government, when we have to be clear what the definition of stealing is. Stealing is the act of taking someone's money, property, or services without their permission. Okay, there's a clear distinction between giving charity and stealing.
Okay.
If you choose to give the government your money, then the government has not stolen from you. Okay, now.
But what does that mean? So if you don't choose to give them your money, they're gonna come and take it.
Yes.
Whether you choose to or not to.
Exactly.
I think that's kind of irrelevant. I think we've already hit that.
Yeah, I mean and that's another totally false premise. Therein lies the problem with democracy. I totally agree with that. Democracy is mob rule, and it just means you're going to be run by a bunch of idiots.
That's why that's why we're in a constitutional republic. Right. We're not in a democracy.
And he lumps the constitutional republic in there, and I would say that's you're aligning you're saying a democracy and a constitutional republic are completely different. That's why the chains were added to the constitutional republic to chain the beast.
With the amendments.
Because the sheeple and the mainstream media
used sheeple.
Yeah, and the unwoked
need to get woke.
Need to get woke, yo. So, for example, Democrats may be for taxation and Republicans against taxation. Here's a perfect example. This is totally Hegelian in dialectic, right? This is a completely false narrative. The Republicans are no more against taxation than the Democrats.
No.
Okay, the Democrats do want to tax us more, supposedly, than the Republicans, but the Republicans have no desire whatsoever to spend less. So they can tax us less all they want and reduce these regulations and increase
the deficit.
Tax, right, but they claim that they're increasing tax revenue.
Well, it's okay, so
but
it's
if
like
they
a political...
never cut the budget, we're going to continue down the toilet hole.
It's like a political ad I saw the other day. This conservative governor, Greg Abbott, he's doing his best. He's going to spend, instead of allocating money on welfare, or whatever it was,
education, whatever.
Yeah, and I was telling Texas Dad about this, but
it's terrible.
He's gonna spend millions and millions on education.
Oh, great!
As if
I can't wait.
We all know it. Throwing money at the problem never fixes
the problem.
It's like a relationship between the rich father who's so busy, can't take care of his kids or his wife, so he throws money at them, and wouldn't you know it, he still loses the relationship because throwing money at something never fixes the problem. And the government acts like they have an unlimited supply of this money, and people begin to realize that, man, I can have a part of this money. They begin to vie for this money so that they can do a better job at what they're doing? No. So they can have more. So they can have. It's the snowball effect of greed, and it just gets everybody. And so appealing to the masses and saying, "Well, I'm going to spend more money on education."
It's a joke. I don't want
to fund.
Look, I don't want you to spend more money on education. Why don't you stop spending?
That's like
and give me my money back.
That's like having a worker who is horrible at what they do, is so inefficient, and saying, well, you know what? Instead of paying him $7, I'm going to pay him $14 so he can do a better job.
Okay, here's a perfect example. Why should I work hard, my wife stays home and trains our children, which is our personal right and our personal responsibility, by the way.
To do so, yeah.
And we do that, right? I don't want any of that. I don't want any of that public stuff, right? So why should I have to fund it? If taxation isn't theft, and I'm not being forced to pay that against my will, why shouldn't they give me that money back? I mean, that's just a logical, and that's just a small tip of the small iceberg.
Yeah,
but that's just further proof that taxation is theft, and I'm being required to pay for the evolution, indoctrination, lack of concentration, camp that's called public school.
And everyone will admit it. Look, if you've got money, if you want your child to do better than the average, send him to a private school. Pay the money and send him somewhere where someone answers to you directly.
Right, and they want you to pay for the private school. Oh yeah, you can do that, but you're going to pay for the public school too. Because you're going to pay for the socialist, communist indoctrination camp. And that's what we have, and that's what they are. And but I'm not going to jail, so I'm paying it. You know why I pay it? You know why I pay my taxes? Because I'm not going to jail.
Tell us, Texas.
I'm not going to fight that fight. I don't want to get shot by the government, and I don't want to go to jail, so I work my butt off every single day, and I create far more than I need to live so that I can give it to our scumbag, worthless, non-representative government that sucks up the payroll, sits in the public trough sideways, produces nothing, robs from the rich, gives to their brother-in-law, stuffs their pockets in their big fat plastic surgery faces, fake lizard slit eye, fake alien losers. Okay, I haven't had a rant in a while, but that felt good. That was all truth, except for the alien thing
and the lizard,
and the lizard
half
eye.
Lizard people.
There may or may not be truth to any of that, but I saw a YouTube video one time.
We pay it, but I think what's beautiful is the fact that we can.
And why can't I not be outraged by the fact that I have to pay that garbage?
Yeah, no, and I think that's great. Be outraged about it.
Of course.
I think that's why America's here. That's why the United States is here, because someone got outraged about what was going on.
You're going to tax my tea? I'm going to throw it in the harbor. And I might dump some tar on you and feather you if you don't get the picture. I tried to do it nice by throwing the tea in the harbor, but if I need to tar and feather you, then maybe that's
the solution. Isn't necessarily not paying your taxes or going around burning mayors' houses. The solution here is just simply discussing it and recognizing what we're looking at.
Yeah, leave me alone. That's my discussion. Leave me alone. Okay, so let's...
Moving on.
Okay, so you may decide to vote for either party. Okay, Republican or Democrat, which is Hegelian again.
Just to dwell on that for a second, because I know Spotter Lynn discussed this as well with our responsibility to vote. Voting, yes, but don't think that just because you vote for someone that thieves are going to stop stealing, that parents are going to start raising their children right, that the influence of just evil in general is going to stop. Just because you vote someone...
There's a lot that if we ever get to jurisdiction, she talked about preserving marriage. The state, once again, should never be involved.